Ruthless Compassion is a podcast that shows you how to become fiercely kind. I'm the host, Dr. Marcia Sirota, and in each episode, I get into it with experts and regular folks about the things that get in the way of what we want. Things like addiction and mental health, isolation and loneliness, difficult family and work relationships, and the importance of self-care. I want to help you overcome the obstacles to living your best life, and I want to inspire you to become a powerful kindness warrior. Lovell is the author of The Curve, available on Portfolio Penguin. It's a book that helps businesses to make money in the digital age. He founded GamesBrief, a website dedicated to new business models in the video game industry in 2008, and has been helping games companies with digital transition ever since. Games clients include Rovio, Square Enix, Maki Labs, and Sega, while non-games clients include Ministry of Sound, IPC Media, and Channel 4. Nicholas is also the author or co-author of Design Rules for Free-to-Play Games, the F2P Toolbox, and How to Publish a Game. Previously, Nicholas was an investment banker at Deutsche Bank and a web entrepreneur. Welcome, Nicholas Lovell. Welcome, Nicholas Lovell, to the Ruthless Compassion podcast. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you.
So I'm just very interested in your book, The Curve, which came out in 2012, I believe.
Right.
And it's
2013. Yes.
And published by Penguin Portfolio, correct?
Correct.
And could you tell us a little bit about this book and what brought you to writing it?
The genesis of The Curve came when I stopped being an investment banker, which I have been for quite a lot of my life. I stopped doing that in 2003, so the global financial crisis wasn't my fault. And I stepped away from that world towards helping media and technology businesses both, figure out how to make money, both from raising it and from revenue, and also build their strategies. I ran a website called GamesBrief, which was all about advice to specifically games companies on commercial issues. And I was also being dragged back by these games companies to do consulting particularly on the finance bit of the world, the bit which I was desperate to get away from. And I had these complicated models, these detailed financial forecasts, which people would get me to fill out for them to help them raise investment. And I woke up one morning going, I have to stop doing this. I don't want to be a finance guy anymore. And I wrapped my brains for how to do it. I'm not terribly good at saying no to things. That's a weakness that I have. So when people ask me for their help and to help them, and I know that I can help them, I find it quite difficult to say no. So I thought, well, I know what I'll do. I will give away this financial model which took me, weeks, probably months to build this particular model, but also a decade of experience to be able to build it. And I thought, if I give this away for free, they won't ask me to do this work anymore because they'll be able to just use the model which I've got. So I put it up on my website. I didn't give it away completely for free. I did put it behind a wall which says, give me your email address and I'll send it to you. So I was already building a list and the ability to talk to people again. And published it, and it was quite a scary moment. I thought to myself, well, that's it. That's the end of that phase of my career. And I was earning a reasonable living from doing this consulting. So it was scary. And I sort of went to bed and thought, well, that's it. It's done. And it wasn't quite overnight, but it was certainly the case that I was completely wrong. It didn't work at all. In fact, it backfired completely. What happened was that people were downloading this spreadsheet. I mean, it was a spreadsheet about how to forecast a business model for particularly in this case, a free-to-play game. In some ways, it's quite a niche. But it was a niche where there are certainly hundreds of people who need this expertise, possibly thousands. And whenever they Googled for advice on how to do it, my spreadsheet came out at the absolute top of all of the Google search results. They came to my website, they gave me their email address, they signed up, they downloaded the spreadsheet, and then they went, I want the guy who created this spreadsheet to come and advise me. I don't just want the spreadsheet, I want the human behind the spreadsheet. And what started as a strategy of how do I give away something which I thought was my most valuable intellectual property, which would completely kill my business, it turned out to do completely the opposite. It grew my business very substantially by the mechanism of giving stuff away for free. And although in some ways that's quite obvious, I mean, Marcia, you do a lot of stuff, giving stuff away for free. Your podcast is a great example. I think 5 or 10 years ago, it was more unusual to do this stuff. And when it was my lifeblood. It was a piece of intellectual property which I had created and valued. It was difficult to give away. That, in many ways, was the genesis of the Curve. At this point, I wasn't trying to follow a Curve-like strategy, and I'll explain that in a second. I was simply trying to stop doing a particular thing I didn't want to do anymore by giving away what I thought was my primary value. And instead, it turned out to be an incredibly valuable marketing resource, and it didn't seem to devalue me. People didn't seem to go, as a result of having access to this spreadsheet, I don't want to talk to the human behind it. Quite the opposite happened. And if I summarize the Curve in, if you like, 3 sentences, it comes in 3 parts. The first part is you have to find your audience. That often, but not always, involves free. And in my case, the spreadsheet and the website was part of it. You then need to earn the right to talk to them again. It's not that useful to find an audience if you haven't got a mechanism of continuing to talk to them. A lot of content marketing fails because it simply puts something cool out there, but has no either call to action, or more importantly, it hasn't earned the trust of the audience. And the successful YouTubers and bloggers and podcasters are the people who have this direct relationship, these email lists, these social media lists, whatever it might be, where their audience come back to them again and again because they've earned the right to keep talking to them. And then the final bit, find your audience, earn the right, and then enable the superfans. And that's about letting the people who love what you do spend lots of money on things they really value. In my world of consultancy, that's direct access to me, it's consultancy work, it's masterclasses, and so on. In the world I spend most of my time engaged with, video games, which are some of the most successful Curve-like businesses in the world, it's a lot more complex than that. But you make a great game, you give it away for free, people play it for days or weeks or months or years, and then you have to start looking for things to sell them that they value when they're not paying for access to the content anymore. And depending on how deep you want to go, later in the podcast we can spend quite a lot of time talking about what people are buying in these video games. But most of the time they're buying something that has social importance for them, some self-expression or external expression, whether or not that's power, whether or not that's who I am, whether or not that's progression, whether or not it's what makes fun for that person. And those people can spend hundreds or thousands of pounds within a single video game because that game has found an audience through free, it's earned the right to talk to them again through being very fun, and then it's enabled the superfans. It's let people spend lots of money on things they really value. It's a very long answer to your question.
I know, I love that answer, and my brain is ticking along because I was having a conversation yesterday with some friends about designer handbags and why people buy designer handbags, and I think it buys right into what you're talking about. It's something that people value because it gives them some social status and a sense of belonging to a group of all the other people who value those particular designer handbags.
So I think that's absolutely right. There's a marvellous book by a chap called Geoffrey Miller called The Mating Mind, who's a sort of anthropologist turned almost darling of the advertising industry, slightly against his will, I think, although I've never met him, which digs quite a lot into those senses of status and belonging. And he goes in very quickly and not entirely. He does say that originally everything goes back to sex and mating. He focuses on Darwin's sexual selection rather than natural selection. And sexual selection is, it's all well and good being the survival of the fittest, the most fitted for your environment. But if you can't pass your genes on to the next generation, it was all pointless. So there are 2 sides to the theory of evolution. And he gives the example of a bird, and I talk about this quite a lot in my book, The Curve, as well. He gives an example of a bird called the bowerbird, which is an Australian bird, which builds a bower. It's not a nest. It's a decorative structure on the ground. There's a bunch of birds which do this. It's quite big. It's decorated with twigs and grasses found all the way across the Australian outback. And it's decorated with blue because the female bowerbird loves blue things. And the bowerbird spends months building this thing. He then gets inside it. The female comes along. He steps out. He does a little dance, goes back in. She admires the nest. She checks them all out and then picks one. And biologists were completely confused as to why this happened. And in 1975, a man called Amos Zahavi said, well, the whole point is we're trying to display that we are strong, powerful creatures. We have surplus energy. We have energy to squander. How do you show that you have energy to squander? Well, you squander it. You waste it in the most obvious way possible. And what the bowerbird is doing is building this totally pointless thing. The poor female has to go and build a nest all on her own afterwards. He's a rubbish father. But he flies across the outback and he's saying essentially, look at me. I've done something totally pointless, but I haven't been eaten. And I still got enough energy to do this silly little dance. And wouldn't you rather that my genes were passed forward to the next generation rather than the genes of that dweeb bowerbird over there with a tiny little house to his name? And what Miller's taken is he said, look, that's like mating. But humans are social animals, and all of those social structures extend into our interactions, our human interactions. So when I go out to client meetings with games companies, I often go dressed in a investment banker style shirt, kind of stiff collar and neatly starched. But I wear Angry Birds cufflinks or Tetris cufflinks. And I'm trying to signal that I am somebody who understands finance, but also somebody who understands video games. And different people choose to display their status in different ways. Having, several university degrees is a form of status. Having designer handbags is a form of status. Having quirky clothes chosen from the second-hand shops of the Portobello Road in London or Soho in New York or wherever it might be is all a form of belonging and fitting in and standing out that comes together. And some people choose to invest time in those things, and some people choose to invest money in those things, but they're all a form of status and display. And the reason why that matters so much for what I think about is that we had a world where if people wanted access to something, particularly content, your books, your podcast, your talks, they had to pay for them. And now in this online world, people expect to get more and more of that for free, either because you or your competitors choose to give it away for free legally, or because they can find ways to download it illegally. And if we want to get them to give us money, we can try the model of the legacy industries, which is basically suing your customers, which I think doesn't have longevity. Eventually they'll just all stop being your customers. I prefer the model which goes, how do you give them stuff they actually want to pay for? How do you let people get access to a lot of your content for free, but then buy your books? So I give away a lot of my content on my website, particularly my games business website, Games Brief. I also publish books, self-published in that case, which has quite a lot of the same content. It's often new content as well, but it's packaged, it's accessible, you can read it in one go. It's a different format, and people will read my content for free and then buy my books and seem very happy to do both.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea of what you were writing in your book about value and feelings and on giving people an emotional experience. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's kind of the core of it in a lot of ways.
So absolutely. I mean, I think we live in a very interesting time where for many businesses for a very long period of time, the actual problem they solved was one of physical distribution. So newspaper businesses thought they were in the business of selling news, but they were actually in the business of selling the ability to get a large folded pieces of paper into tens of millions of people's hands every morning. And then the internet came along and blew that model out of the water, because I can distribute news, in my case games or business news, to millions of people around the world, or in my case tens of thousands, every morning, and I can do that sitting in my living room at my desk in my underpants. So I don't, but I'm sorry for leaving you with that image. But it's a thing that could be done, and I've solved that. Not I have solved, the internet has solved that difficult problem of distribution, which means if you are selling something today, sure, there are some things where physical distribution is still a difficult challenge, although you can partner with Amazon and sell most things. But you have to start creating something which people want for a reason other than this is the only way I can get it, whether or not that is because I can get it legally or illegally. I also think that the advertising world has always known that we sell emotions. I mean, a bad salesman talking about a washing machine will talk about revolutions per minute or spin cycles, and a good one will say that it will make your machines, you make your clothes whiter and smell sweeter, and it will do it more cheaply than the competition. And then the really good ones will make you start believing that you're a terrible mom if you don't use this, or that you are the perfect housemaker if you do this, or any other kind of different model. It's always been about using feelings to sell stuff. I just think it's ever more important, because so much of what we want and need we can get for either free, as in digital stuff, or cheaply, because distribution has become a lot easier in this post-container ship, post-internet, post-just-in-time delivery kind of world.
You're absolutely right. And I think that it also dovetails into this thing about time and attention, which you wrote about in your book, correct? And how our commodities now, it's not how much money we have, but it's how much time and attention we have. Could you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. So I shouldn't say this on a podcast. I've been terribly ruthless with my social media activity recently, and I've had a Facebook cull where I cut over 250 friends from Facebook, and I'm down to 30 only. And that's a direct result of that time and attention problem. I was finding myself in a world where between Twitter and Facebook, which are my social media of choice, not Instagram and Snapchat, I'm just too old, I think, but in those worlds, I loved getting all of these status updates. I loved knowing all of this stuff about my friends, but it was consuming all of my time, and I wasn't working on projects I wanted to do. I wasn't spending as much time with my family as I wanted to. And then possibly because we are in a post-Brexit, post-Trump era, and a lot of the people I knew were British and American, whichever side of those two things you are on, we are quite divided as societies at the moment, and it was just quite noisy and unpleasant. And so I've taken a very active choice to significantly step away from that, because I can always earn more money, but I can't get time back. And maybe it's just a mid-40 something thing, but you just need to. It's worth remembering that time is something which is quite scarce and quite precious, and you need access to. Again, that comes back to the fact that it used to be that I could only read as many books as I could physically carry from the library, and now I can download every book I possibly want onto my Kindle kind of instantly. I don't know how many of your listeners will have books on their Kindle that they've never read because they downloaded them when they were free, or they downloaded a classic. I've got a bunch of Kipling and other books on there because they were free and I still haven't read them. And so it's not access that's the value anymore. It's whether or not you find the time to sit down and read those things.
Absolutely. So how do you use the curve to capture the attention of the people who you would like to be paying attention to you?
I think that comes around to answering the middle bit of the three.
Yes.
So finding your audience and earning the right to talk to them again. When I talk to people in the advertising world talking about content marketing, I have a slightly blogger sentence which goes, content marketing is pointless unless you earn the right to talk to people again. If all you're doing is shouting into the noise and you get people's attention once, and then they stop paying attention because either it wasn't good enough or because there was no expectation of building an ongoing dialogue or conversation or relationship with them, then it was just a waste of money. You've had a momentary blip, and now you'll just have to spend more and more. And like your kind of your extravagant friend or your over-exuberant friend who just tries to get more and more shocking to get people's attention, it doesn't end well, because you just keep trying to be more and more exaggerated until people just go, you know what, I'm not interested anymore. So I think the first answer is that you have to earn the right to speak to people again. I would say, as a piece of categoric advice, build an email list. I know email is old-fashioned. I know email is old school, but it's under your control. And what I mean by that is that Facebook's business model has been get a lot of people to build pages on Facebook, get lots of likes on them, and then abruptly change the rules. So all those people who you thought were your fans, it turns out they're Facebook's, and Facebook will now charge you money to talk to them. And I suspect Twitter is going to go down that direction. It seems to be the model that they're a free place where you can build a following, and then they start trying to charge you money to talk to your own followers or fans or customers or whoever. If you have email isn't isn't free, because you have to either manage your own databases or work with a provider or partner, but it is at least in your control, and nobody can take that away from you. So the first thing I would say is build a relationship with people that justifies them giving them your email address, whether or not it's podcasts that people want to be alerted to, whether or not in my case it's a combination of this spreadsheet and other resources which are essentially one-off. You can get this for free, but you have to give me your email address to do it, and then it's just a blog that follows behind that, or whether or not you have a much more sophisticated model. Most email providers offer a very elegant autoresponder, which means as well as sending timely stuff dated the 1st of May or whatever date, they also allow you to set things up to say on day plus one after this person signed up, send them this email. On D+7, send them this email, which means you can ease people into your world very elegantly. And the time at which people have signed up for your stuff is the time at which they're most engaged with you and what you're doing. So having a first week, 2 weeks, maybe month mapped out of exactly how you want to talk to somebody when they are new to your world, and then let them back into the rhythm that everybody else is a very elegant way of going about it. I don't know how practical you want it to get, but for me, have an email list and manage it well would be at the absolute heart of it.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent piece of advice. So as we are winding up, what would you say is the most important takeaway message about this amazing concept of the curve that you'd want our listeners to get today?
Don't be scared of free, and assume you have to compete with it. And you may think that's only true if you're digital, but my favourite example, which I quote in the curve, is of a chap who installs swimming pools in sort of the Virginia and Maryland, the border between those two states. I'm pretty sure it's that border. I'm pretty sure they do border. And he, you wouldn't think that somebody who installs swimming pools, I mean, they're pretty undigital products. And he says, well, he has a website like you would, and on this website he listed all the reasons why you shouldn't install the type of swimming pools that he installs, a particular type that he makes. And he also lists all of his competitors in the local area. Say, look, if we can't help you, maybe these guys will. And all of these people contact him and say, thank you so much for putting my name up on your website. I don't understand why you do that. And he'd say, well, there are two reasons. The first is that I'm top of the Google list, always. Because if anybody lists out swimming pool supplies, they always list this page. And they always list this page of why not to install this thing. They always send them to my website first. So if you get customers, it's because I don't want them. Because if I wanted them, I could have taken them on the way. They weren't right for me for whatever reason. So he's a purely non-digital business who competes with free by writing high-quality advice, some of which says, don't use me, which builds trust and relationships with people, because he's telling them this is the reasons you shouldn't use my services. He passes people off to other people if necessary, so he's building positive goodwill, and he looks like an upstanding member of the community. But he also gets first look at all the customers and decides whether or not these are appropriate for him. I mean, they're quite big projects. I mean, a swimming pool can cost as much as $100,000 for the ones which he installs. So he's quite happy to let people away. So don't be afraid of free. Do remember you have to compete with it. That doesn't mean you have to be free. It means that you have to have a strategy to cope with it. And wherever you sit on the curve, whether or not you are fundamentally a business which is very, very affected by free, like podcasts and books and digital media, or whether or not you are a bakery or an events company or somebody who's very not digital, you're a physical product, there's always bits of this which you are good at and bits which you need to work at. Finding that audience, probably using free, earning the right to talk to them again by giving them something they value, not a newsletter of your stuff, because newsletters generally mean stuff I want to tell you, and what you want is stuff the customer wants to hear, which is not always the same thing. And finally, remember to have call to actions and asks that start going, well, if this person would give me $10, how could I get them to give me $50? If they would give me $50, how could I get them to give me $500? What could I do which would be of interest that would be valuable to somebody for $5,000 or $50,000, depending on your business? So have that, find them for free, earn the right to talk to them again, and let them spend lots of money if there's something they want to spend on. That's the summary.
That's a fantastic summary. I'm very excited to hear that. Where can people find you, Nicholas, online?
So I am still on social media. You can still find me on Twitter at under the handle of Nicholas Lovell. For games stuff, I go under gamesbrief.com, and that's my website. And for non-game stuff, for Curve stuff, it's nicholaslovell.com.
Wonderful. And what are you working on right now that you might want to share with the audience?
So there's two products which are actually quite different. One is a very games-focused book called The Pyramid of Game Design, where I have a terrifyingly urgent deadline of the end of June to write a book about a structured way of thinking about video game design. And then at the other end, I'm working on a book or a world called Super Saws. So imagine a world where dinosaurs didn't die out. They co-evolved with humans for an additional 65 million years. And if you can imagine a mammal, now a dog, a cat, a horse, there's a saw who fills that role. And we're telling this story through a series of girls' own adventures and boys' own adventures set in the 1930s, sort of Indiana Jones meets Tintin with dinosaurs. And the first book, Raptors of Paradise, is out in September, and I'm particularly focusing on the digital and the augmented reality app, which brings the saws to life on your smartphone while you're reading the book, and that's out in September.
That sounds really exciting. That's wonderful. So I think you probably already gave us your call to action just now when you were saying don't be afraid of free, and find a reason for your audience to keep coming back, and then give them something they might want to spend money on. But is there any other call to action you might want to add right before we go?
I think that's the main one. But what I normally say to people, but particularly when they ask me how to get into games, but it's true for anything, is start. I mean, if you don't know how to do it, start, because you don't learn until you do it. Put up a WordPress website, try and experiment a little, and put it out there. It's probably going to be terrible the first time you do it, but it might not be. And your definition of terrible and other people's are often terribly different. So just start. Whatever it is you want to do, just start.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Nicholas. It's been really a pleasure talking to you today. I'm sure we could go on for many hours, but I will let you go, and much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
That was the brilliant Nicholas Lovell, and I'm Dr. Marcia Sirota. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and review it on iTunes. You can also sponsor me on Patreon at patreon.com/Dr. Marcia Sirota. And please sign up for my free monthly newsletter at marciasirotamd.com. My new book, Be Kind, Not Nice, How to Stop People Pleasing, Build Your Confidence, and Discover Your Authentic Self, is now available on Amazon.ca and Amazon.com.